Okay. So we've done a bunch of research. We've talked about, um, this global energy crisis with regards to finite fossil fuels. We talked about renewable energies and possibly having to design a battery. And we've designed a battery, and then we've talked about taking this small, simple battery that we've made, and now branching up towards the global energy demand. Okay. Well, as scientists, we've got to support what we've discovered, but at the same time, we also have to report what we've discovered. So, an abstract is something that we write that kind of previews what we've discovered. In other words, we have to publish what we've discovered, but we also want to write an abstract because people don't want to read 7 pages, right? If we were to write down and document everything that we've done, it may or may not pertain to something that somebody's interested in. So the abstract is like one paragraph that's very succinct, straight to the point, but at the same time gives a lot of information so that somebody can go through and read the abstract and determine if this article is of interest to them. Okay? So I want to go through this before you guys write your abstracts. I got this from the Online Writing Lab from the University of Purdue. And let's go through here and let's figure this stuff out. So what is the purpose of an abstract? Well, it introduces journal articles, right? So there are journals, scientists at the university level, basically they write articles about all their findings. And there's thousands and thousands of articles. And so the abstract, like I said earlier, it's just one paragraph. It could be 2. But it's just a short, brief description that kind of lets you know what the article is about, what the research was about. And it informs readers of the article's content. It helps readers decide whether they should read it or not. I might be interested in renewable energies, but I may not be interested in batteries. So when I have some key words about renewable energies, my article is really about batteries. So that should be in the abstract. And it's an overview for conference programs and abstract collections and book chapters. So again, it's just a very succinct preview of what the published article is about. Why should I know how to write abstracts? Well, you're going to have to write an abstract at least one time in college, probably several times. Okay? We use abstracts for many things in addition to scientific research. But it helps you to present complex information in a clear and concise manner. You have to be succinct. Succinct is a fancy word that says, I'm going to explain exactly what's in the article without any extra stuff, but I'm not going to be too wordy, but I'm not going to leave anything out. It also helps you read abstracts more effectively. If you have to think about how to write them, then you'll understand how to read them. It helps you conduct research. Remember, Mr. Adams says that when I do research at Northwestern or Notre Dame, the first thing I do is I sit down and lock myself in a cubicle for a couple of weeks and I read article after article. But before I read the articles, I read the abstracts. So I read all these abstracts and I go, nope, that one won't work. Yep, that one might be worth my time. It helps you write abstracts for future publications. If some of you decide to be physicists or engineers or do any type of research, any type of scientific research, you'll have to do the same thing. It helps you condense report information into a short format for database searches. So EBSCOhost is one that I'm very familiar with. There are many other database search engines. They're like the Google for research journals. Okay? And so what they do is they look at the keywords in these abstracts and they help you to find the information that you need. Qualities of an effective abstract: it uses one or more well-developed paragraphs which are unified, coherent, concise, and able to stand alone. It's got to be between 200 and 300 words. Most of the time it's just one paragraph, but you could break it up into 2 paragraphs if you need to, or 3. Uses an introduction, body, conclusion structure. which the parts of the report are discussed in order: the purpose, research questions, methods, findings, conclusions, recommendations. To give you an example, I will verbally state what a good abstract would sound like if I were to read your guys's. The global energy crisis is something that needs to be addressed by scientists today. We are dependent upon fossil fuels, but as everyone knows, fossil fuels are finite. We will run out. Therefore, we have to look at alternative forms of renewable energy. Renewable energies also have some concerns. The sun doesn't shine 24 hours a day. Weather patterns make wind turbines inconsistent. And basically, we would have to find some type of energy storage. Batteries would be very practical because we already have an electric grid. However, batteries have flaws in design issues too. Therefore, we researched and designed a simple, cost-effective, safe battery and something along those lines. So I had an introduction. I went through and I explained what the purpose was. Now, the research that you did was just testing the battery. As we progress in these projects, you'll get more detailed into your methods and research questions and your findings and conclusions. Follows strictly the chronological order of the report. Okay? So if you were to write an article, your abstract should go in the same order as the article. If we talk about, if I were to make you guys write an article on this, the first thing you would talk about would be global energy, because that's the first thing I mentioned in the abstract. You wouldn't mention that at the end or in the middle. And vice versa. You wouldn't write the abstract out of order of the paper. Yes?
So the abstract is kind of like a thesis and like a essay?
Yeah, it's kind of like a thesis. It's like an expanded thesis. It's more like an introduction to what the paper would be. It would be like the introductory paragraph if you were to continue to write, but it's a little bit different. You got to make sure that it's a more detailed version of an introductory paragraph. Okay. Generally, when you write an essay or a paper, the introductory paragraph would have a thesis in it, but you wouldn't define as much stuff. In other words, it would be a little general, a little vague. This would not be vague at all. It'd be very concise, very succinct, very detailed. Okay. It adds no new information, and it merely summarizes the report. You don't introduce any new topics for research. It contains standalone qualities. The abstract can be understood without reading the paper. That's what it means by standalone. Is intelligible to a wide audience. We need to use very succinct language, but it also has to cater to the audience. You guys are in high school. If you're writing these abstracts for your fellow high schoolers, you might want to explain certain terms or change the terms to something that students can relate to. However, if you were to present this at the University of Notre Dame or at Northwestern, you would change that language because those would be college-level students. Does that make sense? So how do I write an abstract? Well, remember that an abstract typically contains the topic, a research question, methods, results, and conclusions. Our methods are going to be, for the first time, a little more general. Usually, if you're doing scientific research, you get into very detailed, very specific things. You usually hone in on one parameter or variable, and you explain in great detail how you describe those things. For the first time, we're just going to get a feel for the format. Read your paper in its entirety. Keep the above categories in mind and underline key points outlined in number 1 as you read. So you would, an abstract is really for a publication. So you would want to go through your paper and read your paper and make sure you're highlighting all those key points from the whole paper in one paragraph, which is not easy to do. So an abstract, a well-written abstract, you just don't write it in 5 minutes. You sit down, you start with a rough draft, and you read your paper, and you go through and you say, oh, I forgot that one key point. You go back, rewrite your abstract, rewrite it. Remember, other researchers will read your paper based on your abstract. But you don't want just random people reading your paper. You want to be very detailed, very concise, very succinct, so that the researcher that reads your abstract wants to read your paper because it's useful to them. After finished reading, create your abstract step by step based on the underlying material. Writing the parts of my abstract. Well, you should write a 1 to 2 sentence introduction to explain the topic, purpose, and research questions. Our research question, and I don't know if you guys remember this, originally was, how can high school students here at Berrien Springs High School help researchers at Notre Dame design a safer battery to serve the purposes of the global energy crisis? Something along those lines would work. And it says, write 1 to 2 sentences describing your research methods. This may also include the type of data analysis you used. Well, basically what you did is you did a bunch of what we would call literature review. So you would say, we reviewed literature and determined that and chose a battery design that was cost effective and safe, made the battery in our classroom, and determined that the batteries that we made could be made all over the world by a wide range of people with limited resources. It says, write 1 to 2 sentences describing the results or findings. I kind of skipped ahead, right? And then it says, write 1 or 2 sentences containing your conclusions and recommendations. One of the recommendations, we've had a lot of recommendations, but one of the recommendations was that you could take these batteries and take them and build them and use them in third world countries for energy source or an energy storage for basic things like light, running a pump that pumps water, something that would be a low voltage. You can make lots of these batteries, but you guys figure out what you recommend. Remember, we're building these batteries to address a global energy crisis, but we're trying to do it at a high school level. But we're still addressing a global crisis. So we're going to take these aluminum air batteries that we made with soda cans, and how could we impact the world energy demand with that simple design? Have a lot of people make those batteries, right? Revising the abstract. Read your abstract all the way through. Add transition words that tie ideas together. Eliminate unnecessary content and add in things that are missing. Correct errors in mechanics and proofread. Here's an example of a well-written abstract. This article contains results of usable research conducted on the Purdue Online Writing Lab. The Purdue Online Writing Lab is an information-rich educational website that provides free writing resources to users worldwide. Researchers conducted 2 generations of usability tests. In the first test, participants were asked to navigate the OWL and answer questions. Results of the first test and user-centered scholarship indicated that a more user-centered focus would improve usability. The second test asked participants to answer writing-related questions using both the OWL website and a user-centered OWL prototype. Participants took significantly less time to find information using the prototype and reported a more positive response to the user-centered prototype than the original OWL. Researchers concluded that a user-centered website is more effective and can be a model for information-rich online resources. Researchers also conclude that usability research can be a productive source of ideas, underscoring the need for participatory invention. Obviously, Mr. Adams got a little bit of a cold, so I can't read very well. But you know exactly what they did. There was an original website. They made a new website. The new website was user-centered. And the people like the new website better. There's no question about this. And you can read this and clearly see what the research was that they did. Does that make sense? All right. Where can you find additional information? Well, you can go on their website. It's owl.purdue, or I'm sorry, .english.purdue.edu. You could call them if you want, but I wouldn't call them.